And good morning. So glad that you've joined me today. We're looking forward to a great show. The wonderful, marvelous legend, Glenn Kaiser, is here with us today. And excited to spend some time with him and talk a little bit about band ministry and the family today. And we're going to have a good time with that subject. Todd Bowe is attempting to join us, and he'll be with us in just a little bit, I think. So I'm just trying to get this looking perfect. There we go. We're on. So, folks, thank you for joining me. If you're just tuning in, would you let me know where you're watching from? It's kind of our drill every week, isn't it? But we love to know where you're watching from, and love to know that you're here. Good morning, Mike. Good to see you. And he says, "How are you doing?" I'm doing great. I'm. You can probably tell on my face the allergies are strong today for some reason, but uh, but I'm pushing through. Things are good. Excited for a great show today, and excited to spend some time with you, folks. Once again, sign in. Let me know where you're from. Steve says good morning from Connecticut. And, one of the greatest things about the show are people joining us from all over the United States and all over the world. We have a lot of people watching from places you wouldn't believe. Yes. And I love that part that we are one big family. And more specifically, we are metal, we are family. Love that part. So, folks, it's a beautiful day here in Nashville. It's my kind of day. David Kelly White says it's 29 degrees in Littleton, Colorado. I think it's in the 60s here right now, and or nearing there. And we just don't have cold weather per se yet. It's colder than summer, but love this time of the year. All the trees are changing colors, and that's kind of a cool thing. My friend Emma is here from Montana, and I'm sure it's getting a little more chilly there, isn't it? People from all over the world are having a lot of snow. And as I talk to people every day, that's the case. Jonas, I'm sure you're not having snow. Jonas is joining us from Kenya, Africa, and Sanctuary, Kenya. He says, looking forward to the day the new Sanctuary worship songs can be played during the countdown. Yes. And of course, he's talking about the worship project that's going on with Sanctuary Kenya and some guys from Sanctuary Denmark. And we're excited for this new project. It's sounding really good. And very soon we're going to have Mouse on with us also to give us a little preview of Sanctuary Holland and some of the great music they're doing there with the new praise and worship album there. And it's kind of cool to see how many worship projects are going on. Jonas, I think you guys were probably one of the first, and you're probably the furthest along, and a lot of the songs are really getting done. So awesome to lead the movement with worship. Av, our good friend, is here. He says good morning to you, my good friend, and very consistent in joining us. And Av, I appreciate you being part of this family. Folks, we have a great family. Sean is here from San Diego, or Sandy Ego, depending upon what you're eating when you're on the beach. And San Diego, I know it's an old joke that the Sanctuary San Diego used to make. Sandy, Sandyeggo, San Diego. Yeah, I know. Al Cox is here from Elgin, Illinois, old friend of the ministries. Al, good to see you as well. And a few friends from Illinois, including Glenn Kaiser in just a few minutes. Good friend from Chicago. Good morning from Oklahoma. Stephen Cole is here with us today. Lots of folks from the U.S., and I'm sure there'll be others joining us from all around the world. Most people watch this show after the fact, and we get thousands of people that watch the show, and I would say probably half to two-thirds of them watch it not while we're live, but after the fact. And I appreciate that you're joining us whenever you're joining us. And if you don't join us live, continue to leave messages. I read them and I love seeing what you have to say. Forrest Ray is here, checking in from Lansing, Michigan, packing for a ministry weekend. Wow, that sounds awesome. Good weekend for ministry. Any weekend is good for ministry, isn't it? And I love that part. And I love folks that so many of you are involved with ministries of all kinds. And we're going to be talking to Todd in just a couple of minutes, and we'll talk a little more about the ministries that are going on here. I'm not so sure if Todd has joined us yet. He was having a little trouble signing on, and hopefully he'll get signed on, and if not, I'll just keep talking for a little bit. I know. So, as you know, we have a great ministry here with not only with Sanctuary meeting here every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. is 242 at the storehouse, we call it. And it's from Acts 242, a great time together. First Saturday of every month is always our gathering, and those are really wonderful times. So join us if you can. Kyle is here from Holland, Michigan. And John, I didn't see the one that was right before this one. I'd love to read it. There it is. Adrian is here today. He says, Adrian says, I'm down in your neck of the woods, Pigeon Forge, but normally from Ohio, about an hour away from BMI, where we do our festivals in the summer. But that's awesome. And Adrian, good to have you here, obviously. Great to have you here. And folks, so again, sign in, join us if you would. Love to see who's here with us. I'd love to say hello to you. Barry is a very, very good member of the Sanctuary family. And he says hello this morning too. Good morning to you, Barry. So, folks, it's been an interesting week here. We did a wedding here. A tent was set up in my yard for 150 people, and it was a special wedding for me. Joey Mancaruso and his lovely wife now, Crystal, got married, and Joey is the son of Glenn Mancaruso, the drummer for Vengeance. I married he and his wife many years ago. I dedicated Joey when he was a baby, baptized him as an adult, and had the privilege of now doing his wedding. And I just love watching things like that come full circle. And wonderful wedding, wonderful crowd, about 150 people, as I said, and we had it right here on my lawn. The wedding was on the lawn, and then the big reception in the tent, because our facilities here aren't quite big enough to hold 150. That's a lot of people, but it was really a great time. David says the leaves are down now. I'm sure they are in Colorado. Yes, and a lot of ours are too. But I was just thinking this morning, Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and then from there, Christmas. And I was putting together some promo for our next gathering here next month, and I thought, I guess it needs to be a Christmas thing. And it just doesn't feel like the Christmas is that close, but I guess it is. It's just around the corner. And of course, very soon here, we're going to see a lot of Christmas decorations because they begin to go up way before Thanksgiving these days. So, when do you decorate for Christmas? Those of you that are watching, are you an early person? Do you wait until closer to Christmas? And do you decorate at all? Good morning from Watertown, New York. Terry Galloway is here. Good morning to you, our good friend in New York. And folks, again, sign in. Let me know where you're watching from. At the mountain, um, good afternoon from Denmark. Excited to hear from Glenn Kaiser. Yes, we all are. And that, I believe, would be Morton, most likely, from Denmark. Pastor Bob Beeman, good morning from Terry Galloway. Good to have you here, Terry, as we said before. And folks, again, if you're just joining us, sign in. So we've got some good shows coming up, and I wanted to announce what some of those are. Also, of course, we have Glenn with us today. And John, if you can put that slide up, there we go. We have Luke Easter with us next week. Luke, singer for Tourniquet, as you know, and for Stop the Bleeding now, a member of Sanctuary here in Sanctuary, Nashville. And then, of course, our good friend Sean from Grave Robber is going to be here at the end of the month, and lots of really great shows coming up. So you won't want to miss any of those, and you want to be sure that you mark those on your calendar. I know. Well, we've got Glenn Kaiser coming up in just a minute. And folks, we always have some great things to talk about. Glenn is the one regular guest that I have all the time. We've been good friends for a very long time, and we're going to invite him to come on the show in just 1 minute. Don't go away. We will be right back. Hello, family. I'm excited to be with you this year at Light the Dark Festival. We're going to have a great time in Norrköping, Sweden, March 28th and 29th. Great bands, great fellowship. I can't wait to be there with you. Don't miss it, folks. Get your tickets now. They're on sale. And I'll look forward to seeing you in March.
Anybody want coffee?
Welcome back to the show. And of course, our special guest today, very special guest, always special, is Glenn Kaiser. Good morning, Glenn. Good to have you on the show.
My pleasure as always, Bob. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Always good to see you. Glenn, we go back a few years, and we're kind of we don't say two of the fathers of the movement. We say grandfathers, or probably great grandfather soon. Do you think that's true?
Well, it'd be nice to be great, but just to be a grandfather is pretty interesting. I was an addict back in the day, and I never thought I'd live past 21 or 22. I really didn't.
Yeah, and you're just a little past 21 now.
Yeah, think 71.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm just a year ahead of you. I actually just celebrated the 51st anniversary of my 21st birthday. So still 21, still trying to stay there if I can. Yeah. Well, Glenn, I want to talk a little bit about longevity today because, longevity is something that you don't really grasp when you're 21. And yet, at 21, you don't realize, the span of your life and the twists and turns that it might make, and the foundations that are so important to lay at that time. You've been married to the lovely Wendy Kaiser.
Mm,
How many years now?
yeah, 52 years.
Wow, isn't that great?
It really is.
And in that time, it's been total wedded bliss, 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 and a few blisters, maybe.
Yeah, the scripture that comes to mind is all liars, lake of fire, something in Revelation about the first 3 years. I have to say, first of all, we were 19, and no offense to anybody who's out there, 19 or younger at all, but we were just kids, and she at least had a godly mom and a sort of a some of the old term would be whiskey priest. Her dad was a back and forth alcoholic and adulterer. And my wife grew up in the church with a good, godly mother. Her dad was a pastor, but he was a train wreck. But she at least had that witness of her mom, Dawn, who's with the Lord now. She's an incredible woman. And my wife is the most godly person that I know, and her mom beat her out by that for a while there. But she's with the Lord now. So, and I grew up. I was the third kid in the family, and my parents got a divorce. My mom divorced my dad and ran off, committed adultery, and blah blah blah. And of course, none of that ever happens among professing Christians, right? And part of what went on, my dad got sick and we lost everything. And the economics fell apart, And my mom ended up going to the big city to work. I grew up in the sticks in central Wisconsin, and then inside or just outside of very small towns. We moved around a bunch. So anyway, things caved in. Well, my parents didn't know Jesus. I had no, there are a couple of blips on the screen where I often say I have nothing to do with church. And nothing is probably too strong of a term, but there was just a small little VBS one summer, Vacation Bible School. And then one other little stint when a friend of mine kept asking me to come to his church for catechism on Saturdays. And I heard a bunch of information, but I didn't know how to know Jesus. And I walked out after a bit, and I just didn't. It's like, what about him? I mean, literally, I thought that. What about him? The one on the cross. So I grew up a pagan, and I was, always in bands with people much older than me, and dope and booze and sex and nonstop. And I didn't want to get married to anybody. I mean, I went through a bunch of women. And even after I came to the Lord, I said, you're going to have to hit me with a brick. I'm not going to marry. I'm not going to shop. I'm not going to date. I'm done. I mean, it's stupid. It's a dead end, and I'm going to backslide, and I know it, and I'm not going to do it. And I also put music away, gave all my gear to a Christian band, and just bailed because nobody taught me. I didn't hear some, anti-rock preacher. It was a personal conviction. Who is Jesus? If he's Lord of my life, then he's Lord of my life. And I want to follow him and walk with him, not just information, not just this transactional salvation. I made the transaction. I said the right stuff. Okay, you died on the cross for me. You were raised from the grave. Yep, I'm justified. Yeah, eternal life. But don't mess me up with telling me how to live it. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's nobody out there watching or hearing this as a Christian musician who's ever been more in love with their music than God. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, falling into the cartoon caricature of a rocker, or these days I reverted right back to where I started in blues. You're a human being. You know that. We put our pants on like anybody else. But the problem is, instead of commitment, right? So the first 3 years of our marriage, because we were such kids, if we had not been raised closely with several solid, godly in-laws and other leadership, pastors speaking into our lives, small group, accountability, I think we might have killed each other the first few years. But over time, we decided, now we both wear the pants. And maybe we need to be partners. And maybe we need to really choose, risk to respect one another and put aside a little pettiness. And she knew the Lord and the Word so well. and she was much more gracious. I learned more about love and grace from my wife than anybody. That's a fact. I mean, now I had been lawless. Okay, now I know the scriptures. Now I'm in the Word every day, right? You know, even as a brand new Christian, I'd read like 10 chapters a day slow and pray like crazy. And I needed to do Jesus like I'd done dope, sex,
Yeah. Right.
booze, and music. You know, I couldn't do all those on 10 and really more like 26 and do Jesus on 6.5 and show up for an hour a week in a building with some folks. It just wasn't going to happen. I had to be in an intentional full-time community in my case, which I did, and that's where Wendy and I met. Anyway, over the next 3 years, we learned how to forgive one another, which is, I mean, what's the salvation is about? God's forgiveness. Jesus on the cross. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Talk about reality. And when you're young and you're a musician and you have opportunities to do shows and record and travel, and you know, people are coming up to you going, we love you, you're wonderful. I mean, Wendy and I, after Resurrection Band, Res Band shows, commonly, and I still do it with GKB, three-piece blues rock group, when I do solo shows, talking with folks and praying. We got to the point where we realized the guys would be coming up to her sometimes, and the girls would be coming up to me, which was really ridiculous. But anyway, we would sit maybe, I don't know, 6-8 feet apart, all the band along the end of the stage, or we would go out into the seats and, you know, be about that close and talk to folks and pray with folks after the gigs. I mean, I typically preached and, you know, gave an invitation. People would come to the Lord. And very quickly we learned which I needed to send most of these girls to my wife.
Yes.
And she needed to send most of those guys to me, which we did. And, you know, we would compare notes and talk things over. I think all of that, Bob, is why, I mean, we're in love. Like, I can't even tell you. The last 10 or 15 years have been just, you know, a taste of heaven. I mean, they were always wonderful, I have to say, especially after the first 3 when we decided, let's not be petty and pick at each other over Mickey Mouse nonsense, you know. But it takes time. And when you're young and you're hot to trot on shows and interviews and, you know, you're recording and people think you're the coolest thing since sliced bread or whatever.
Yes.
Or if you're in Europe, real bread. You guys know what real bread is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, so many things can go to your head. And one of the things, Glenn, that I hear often from couples in counseling, especially from musicians, is the wife saying, I feel like he's married more to his guitar than he is to me. That's a trap that a lot of people fall into, is putting the music first. I get falling in love with music. I get that, you know, music is something that is extremely creative and extremely personal, and the need to demonstrate it and to be involved with it. And yet, marriage, the Bible tells us, is our first ministry. How have you rectified both? How did you keep that in balance?
Well, I mean, Bob, early on, I mean, this is so obvious, right? It's so, and it was obvious when I was, you know, 18. We married at 19. It was obvious then, but it became more and more clear that it was not just important, but crucial, like essential. Like, this has to be at the top of the list. My relationship to Jesus and her relationship to Jesus, my wife, Wendy. And next, very next, our relationship to one another. And then as kids came, as we had children and we fostered and adopted, relationships, hardest thing you'll ever do. And it was easy, especially for me. She had never, you know, sung in a band, never been a musician in her life. I mean, she sang in, you know, madrigals or something in high school, right? And loved music. But at the end of the day, the relationship the center, the issue is identity. Is my identity first, beyond everything else, a child of God? Am I? Is God my Father? Is my relationship to Jesus as my Lord and Savior? And there is a verse, as we speak, my brother, my elder brother, relational, and in relationship with God, the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
Which seems really esoteric and weird, and it's hard to grasp sometimes. The wind, pneuma, but so relationship to God, the triune God, the Trinity, and first of all, and then my wife, and then my kids, and out from there. Also, with godly people in leadership, mentors, pastors, folks that loved me enough to call me aside from time to time and go, "Whoa, time out. You're a bit full of yourself here. You're missing the boat in the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, being patient. Love is patient, love is kind."
Yeah.
I might have shared that last time. At one point I said, "Wendy, love is patient, love is kind." That's how Paul starts talking about love in the love of God, agape, real love, in 1 Corinthians 13, of course. And I thought, if I was more patient, I might be more kind. And it just, ooh. And so, of course, the iron sharpening iron. One person sharpens another, and there's going to be heat and sparks and friction, and we don't always want to be called out. And of course, so what you end up with as a musician, your identity is music is larger than life, but it isn't life. It's powerful. It's a gift. By the way, it's a skill. It's not a spiritual gift. Music is never mentioned as a spiritual gift in the scriptures.
Right. That's right.
It's a practical skill that you can learn. Maybe some of us have more aptitude, or we're born with more of that musical talent and that artistic mode, among other great artistic modes. But your identity is, I'm a child of God. I'm in relationship to my Father, to my wife, to my kids, to our local church. And how I interact with people relationally is the issue, and it's the hardest thing. Communication, which is super part of it. Yeah. And there's actually a book out it's a secular book, but a couple of incredible statements. And one is that it's worth, if nothing else, the conversation is the relationship. The conversation. If you're not talking with each other, I don't mean screaming, hollering, yelling, griping, constantly negative, but honest, genuine, gracious, learning to be gracious and gentle in communication with one another, that's massive. But that's true on every level. You with the Lord, you with your spouse, your mate, your wife, your husband, your children, learning how to be gracious but honest, and it takes time, right? So over a period of years, we learned, and of course, you can either say, plug your ears, and yes. I'm not going to. Book of James, I look in the mirror, and I walk away and forget. That's not just forgetting that you're a child of God, but it's forgetting your old nature, the capacity you have to blow it, and that the fact that you do blow it. It's a true look at who you are. Very difficult for a lot of us. And as musicians, we can hide in the music and our talent and our abilities. And people, oh, you're wonderful. You're not with me when I'm over at these little sinks on second floor doing the dishes. You're not with me when I have to clean the grease trap out every 4 or 5 months. That's fun. And it's like, you got to help me through this, Lord. This is not one of my my most enjoyable moments. But learning to embrace crosses as a couple, and to support and encourage one another. And when I'm weak, then I'm strong. God makes us sufficient for everything, including any relationship that He wants you to have, and any marriage. But it's the doing. I mean, we can quote those scriptures all day. I can quote them all day long, and I believe them. But it's about walking the talk. It's about living out what He says. It's about, what does this mean in terms of bearing my cross in my relationship with the person that I love most on earth, which is Wendy.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And so, here I am all these years later. I mean, she does things these days she never did early on, and me too. I'm serving and plugging in with the kids and the grandkids and doing things for Wendy all the time. And of course, the beauty is, well, just one little thing. I'm very physical, not just about sex, but just embracing people. I've thought about, should I even do this, but believe me, but I'll take somebody's hand, guy or girl sometimes, and just put it against my cheek, and sometimes I'll do the sort of the old European, kiss somebody's hand. I mean,
Yeah.
Wendy, I embrace her all the time. I love her to bits. And so how do I communicate? And my dad was very much that way too. And probably where I learned it. These days, when I give her a hug, which I do a number of times a day, she often gets up on her tiptoes because I'm a fair bit taller than she is, even though I'm fairly short. And so she'll just get up on her tiptoes, and I'm like, she's so sweet. She's so cute. And I love this girl so much. There's a price to pay for a deeper relationship.
Yes.
And it means you can't be the center of the universe. And whether or not 5,000 people thought you were the coolest thing since sliced bread, when you walk off the stage and it's time to be a husband and carry the heavy stuff,
Yes.
whatever, I wanted to do this and that, and she wanted to do something else. And well, what's it going to be? And so it's little things. We're learning how to be kind. So I've talked a lot, Bob. So I'm going to lateral the ball to you.
So Glenn, it's interesting. Let's go back to the very beginning, and also, John, if you could put that one comment from Jonas on again, going back to the very beginning of Resurrection Band.
Right.
And we're going back to the 1970s there. You had not only the responsibility of marriage, but the responsibility and kind of pioneering, as it were, a movement. This is from Jonas from Sanctuary, Kenya. And he says, thanks for being one of the grandparents. You were one of the reasons why my parents accepted my music and style. We even went to a few of your shows together. It helped building that bridge. So in that sense, you are a grandparent. You're impacting 2 generations down. That's cool, isn't it?
It is. God's grace, man. That's Daddy. That's Abba.
Yes. But Glenn, those beginnings were not easy. And I remember those days. I remember the record release thing at CBA convention that year. I was there. I remember you guys playing. I remember just goosebumps, being so excited because finally some true Christian rock and roll. And again, this is the mid 70s. So that was it was a wonderful time, but it's a time of huge responsibility. Here you are setting an example for a movement and your marriage. Chapuza, Jesus People USA, where you've got a whole lot of people that you're helping and a whole lot of things on your plate. And Glenn, that's when a lot of marriages go.
Well, Jesus is my Lord, and he calls the shots, and I pray like crazy, slam the doors shut if I'm spinning too many plates. The doors he closes, no man can open. The doors he opens, no man can close. And I'm constantly saying, Lord, if this is your will, now it seems pretty clear. You're giving me some confirmation in prayer, and as I read scripture, as I bounce things off of mentors, people that disciple me to this day, and of course off of my wife, and Wendy and I pray together about stuff, and we're always talking. So I'm constantly, and I'm very, I've got a lot of creativity and imagination going on, and in fact, we just had a zine, as a magazine zine gathering and workshop here at Jesus People, and I thought about it for some years, and all of a sudden mini zines. So now I'm doing these little mini zines. You take one sheet of paper and you've got, when you fold it and you make one cut down the middle the right way, you end up with, you know, the front and the back, and then, you know, panels. So I've come up with so far about 4 different designs and ideas and things I want to say, pass them out all over the place, hand them to people. They don't feel like a tract. They feel cooler. And of course you do artwork and stuff, and I just do them black and white. So they're a little metally, punky, intense.
Yeah.
And well, the first one I did was on being, it's basically my testimony in short. And at the very end, I quote, and I didn't quote it in King James, but my memory was, you know, from way back when, I was found of those who sought me not. So part of the responsibility for me is always being an evangelist. And what modes of communication? Well, with everything I'm doing online, which is I'm tons, you know, blogs and Facebook and Instagram and on it goes. My Wix site is my main site. And then way back when did the responsibility, which you know, we just talking about that, Responsibility of the Christian Musician, not the greatest book ever. I look at all the flaws now. But I put it up online for free on an old, the one I've got a bunch of different sites off of WordPress, and I created a bunch of different WordPress sites for different things. And one is the entirety of the Responsibility of the Christian Musician. It's just free. You can read it online or cut and paste and download it. And it's in English as well as Spanish. So it's a long website, but once you get there, you can bookmark it if you want and have a read or cut and paste, or, you know, I don't care. It's not about money at all. It's a free site. And, you know, we just want to share the importance of relationships and responsibility. And the reason that book got written, that little book, was I was touring with Res Band, and I remember there was a point where throughout a Canadian tour, coast to coast, we did a number of those, as well as, of course, everywhere else in the world you can think of, except for Asia and the Middle East. I mean, we were everywhere else many times. Not so much South America, that's right, but everywhere else. And so I'm up in Canada, and I'm laying across the beds of hotel rooms as we're traveling. And Wendy's hanging out for a bit with the kids, or they would go off, you know, to get coffee or a treat. And I would take a little time out. Sometimes I had to sleep a little more because I was so fried night after night doing these shows. Res was so intense, you know. I'm laying across the bed with a notebook and a pen, writing essentially what became the Responsibility of the Christian Musician. And the reason that I wrote it was because I kept getting a zillion questions after shows, you know. And as I said, we would sit out and talk with people, and we still do night after night, and have long convos about everything you can think of. And people are struggling with sin. They're struggling in their marriage. They're a pastor, and they're backsliding. They've been falling, but they don't know who to talk to, because if they bring it up to the wrong people, maybe the right people, they're going to get fired, or, you know, or they're going to be run out of town. Who can I share with? What's going on? So it goes on and on. So I started writing that little book. And by the time I got home, it was a matter of handing it to a couple of people at our Cornerstone magazine, that's defunct, but at the magazine staff, I had a desk over there where I wrote and began to communicate with people a whole lot. And they created the book for me. And they literally said, what about putting this in book form? I said, well, that's the point, because I keep getting asked the same questions. But it funnels down to relationships. And that's really what the book is about.
You know, that's what God calls us to, is relationship. And I apologize, Pastor Bob had to step away. We're on with Glenn Kaiser. And Glenn, what have you learned over your years in doing music ministry and obviously now as a pastor at Chapuza? What's the biggest thing that has challenged you about relationship with people that you've come in connection with between an artist and being a minister?
Well, I want to say first, there's a sense of anonymity if you're a musician. You can keep it very, the conversations can be super shallow. They can be all about music, all about your latest release. You're the best thing we ever heard. What's the incredible, you know, you can talk about instruments, you know, amps, guitars, technique. That's all good. None of that's necessarily wrong. But you can be so shallow in your convos with people after shows or when they write you or they connect with you online, social media, email you, whatever, however you connect. There are people that are in deep need. I mean, in deep need. Some of them are professing Christians. Some of them are professing to be Christians and they're not really saved. They don't know him. They're not in real relationship with Jesus. It's just information. It's transactional maybe. I prayed the prayer. That's it. Okay, my name's in the Lamb's Book of Life. Get off my, get off my lawn. I'm done. I'm there. So it can become so shallow because the musician can tend to be shallow and immature. And instead of understanding, dudette, you're in a position to actually reach out. Okay, I'm not a pastor. I don't have a pastoral gift. Cool. I'm not an evangelist. I play drums or bass in a band, whatever. I don't sing. I don't write the lyrics. I get it. That's cool. Fair enough. You're a human being with other human beings, and you're hopefully a follower of Jesus, a genuine born again. You're a Christian, right? What does that mean? How do you encourage people who show up at your shows, except for music? That's it? That's all you got? That's it? To me, that's one-dimensional. Now, part of that's my calling and gifting as an evangelist and a pastor and so on, John. But at the end of the day, when you keep it distant and shallow, well, you're protecting yourself, but you're not necessarily ministering the love and the reality of Jesus to people. And that's why I breathe. I don't know if you realize this yet, but you're not on the planet to simply serve yourself and to be safe and protected. And you get out in public and people are going to lie about you. They'll stab you in the back. They'll repeat stories from people who have zero idea of who you are, or you'll meet somebody who you turned down one time. Maybe, I don't know about you, we give our CDs away all the time, but okay, they wanted 3 freebies on the night. And some of these folks, by the way, honestly, are physiologically, mentally challenged. They have problems, right? They get on social media and start ragging on you and repeating all sorts of stories. This has happened to most of us, or if we've been around it for any length of time. This happens to preachers, worship leaders. It doesn't matter who you are. And you go, whoa, I kind of remember that person. I think they had some problems. Oh, they wanted whatever it was, and I couldn't give it to them. For whatever reason, I couldn't do the thing they wanted. All of a sudden, I'm the enemy. I get wanting to protect yourself. I get it. And you want everybody to think well of you. And I know what the scriptures say about it. I can quote them right now verbatim, several of them. But at the end of the day, this world is a broken world. There are piles of sinful people, and a lot of them are in church regularly, and they're not repenting. I live in church basically 24/7 and 365 and have for most of my life, right? I sin, I ask forgiveness. I have to face up to the issues. And it's not always easy or fun. But when you're in a situation where you're dealing with people, many of those people are broken, and some of them are going to think because of some lyrics from your band, whether you wrote them or not, whether you sang them or not, whether you even like them or not, and they'll start talking to you and pour out pain and struggle and hurt. Some of these folks, it's in their head. It's not reality. If Jesus was standing next to him, he'd go, that's true. That isn't. Yeah, that really happened to you. No, you're stretching that from here to kingdom come, man. You stretch that out a mile. That's just not reality. You don't know that. You're not, none of us, the most discerning with the gift of discernment, spiritual gift, with wisdom and years. Sometimes I misjudge, make a bad call. I don't always know whether I'm hearing the truth or a lie or a fabrication. But people are addicted and they're hurting and they're in need. People struggle with all sorts of stuff. So what do? We hand them songs. Go and be filled. See ya. I'll tell you one of the reasons that I respect, but we have one of the largest homeless shelters in Chicago.
Yeah.
On the north side here. Cornerstone Community Outreach. One of the reasons I love and respect Bob and his mom and what Sanctuary Nashville does is reaching out to people who are living under the bridge, who are reaching food, clothing, whatever. Ooh, social gospel. You're not preaching the word anymore. You know what I just did last night? I'm down at Cook County Jail, and it was my turn to bring the word. John 3:16 and try 17. What's God's intent toward people? Come on. I do this continuously. These little zines I'm about to stuff out all over the place in the free little libraries and coffee shops and hand to people, and backstage when I do show, or at my merch table, little freebie handout, little, what do you think that's all about? So you're going to find people who are going to come to you in real need and hurting. You better learn how to network with people who can help if you can't. You better learn to get with people throughout your town, throughout the country, wherever you are. Ask a few questions and think about, if you can't answer, if you can't help them directly, if you're on the road, you're up to the next gig the next night somewhere else, what about them? And this is where it's important to get to know people, build relationships, and or have a wife who's willing to talk and pray and maybe email or in social media, DM, direct message. This is about serving God and people. If it's just about music and it's a hobby, it's your profession, you put food on the table and that's it. Cool. All right, cool. That ain't me. And that's not what God, I think, has called most true followers of Jesus to live. Yeah. You don't pay your pastor to do your ministry for you. You don't pay some other evangelist. For years on the road, I'll just say this too. Got in some great relationships. I won't name the country. And many tours there. And don't ask, because I'm not going to tell you. And I remember having conversations where people would say, "We are so glad you've come," and I'm thank you. And we have a few Christian artists here as well, but they don't get out much. They don't do much. And I'm like, why not? Churches, parks, parking lots, the street. If you're a solo musician or even a band, I saw a band in Amsterdam. That wasn't the place in Amsterdam, who were able to plug into the lights around one of the biggest squares in Amsterdam. Yeah. 5 guys in a band. They looked like they just came off the stage with Metallica. Right? They had little battery-powered amps, which I actually use those for. I have a few of them now. And they had a drum kit with duct tape on cymbals and stuff. This is a secular band, mainstream band, not believers. Guy had a flying V. Singer with 2 mics plugged into 2 battery-powered amps. And they had the volume just right with all these battery-powered amps. And they were killing on, they were doing, in fact, I think they might have done Megadeth, some Zeppelin stuff. And they were great. And people, of course, threw some money into guitar cases, whatever. These guys were killer. They determined that they were going to, because of their love for music, go out in the street with battery-powered amps where they were allowed to do it. Amsterdam's pretty crazy, pretty open. Right now, they're going through all sorts of stuff. But anyway, I'm like, so where are the Christians? Where are people sharing the gospel? Where are people a little salt and light, Come on. So to me, being in relationship to Jesus and relationship to people, we have got to get beyond ourselves and worry about whether somebody, how many unit sales of our records, how many shows how many people showed up. Man, some of the most incredible things happened on nights where we saw 30, 40 people, and then, we would see several thousand, okay? I get it. So what? Big deal. Did Jesus die for math or people? He didn't die for numbers.
Well, he died for people one at a time, didn't he? Yes.
He leaves the 99 and goes after the 1. But I'm simply saying, when you're talking about relationship and caring about people, have your ears open.
Yes.
And don't just, the 15 people that say you're you're brilliant. Oh, I love your vocals. Oh, your guitar playing. Oh, that was the best album I ever heard. Man, da da da. I'm like, Thank you. Cool. Praise God. I mean, that's hallelujah. I'm glad. And I am.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm not an artist. It's not like I don't care about art. It's not like I don't care about tone and production and all. I do.
But there's
I'm not. We're here for people.
Yes.
We are metal. What we are? Did somebody say family? What does that mean? It's relational. It's about relationships, right?
Yes.
It's about relationships.
And Glenn, the only reason that you and I are still here, the only reason that God doesn't take us to heaven the moment we become Christians is so we can take as many people home with us as we can. And that's the best part. John, we've got some questions today. If you could put the first one up there, and people have some questions for Mr. Glenn Kaiser this morning. It's from Joel. He says, I know I'm getting a lot of flack on one metal site for posting Christian metal bands. Some people are not only booking me, but they're also throwing mocks at the church and Jesus and everything. You're dealing with Satanists, strict atheists, and all the rest. What should I do? Good question.
Be kind.
Yeah, there you go.
Pray for them.
Yeah.
Pull up, toss out a song here and there by a band or two or three that absolutely rock their brains in, that really do have great songs, great production, great performance, and so forth.
Yes.
That to follow Jesus. Right? Simple as that. And as far as church folks, look, you've never met or been in any church anywhere on earth where everybody agrees with each other on every issue. And they're not going to agree about music.
It's the nature of the beast, yes.
Did I say politics? Go down the list, right? So what's your being kind, love is patient, love is kind. It is so difficult when people are blasting you and blasting bands that you love, and I get that. Our fans always got more flack than Res Band did. Always.
Yes.
We never got half the flack. And often we'd have people come back to us years later and apologize. We had one lady at a festival come up with her daughter, both weeping, apologizing to me and Wendy. We were doing a seminar, packed out, huge tent at a huge festival. She said, I spoke against you people and drove my poor daughter crazy, and I am so sorry. Because she saw us in concert, and she heard what I said, and she picked up, these people aren't playing, they aren't playing around, they're for real. And you can love us or hate us, but yeah.
And Glenn, you and I could be here all day telling those stories.
Oh.
And I realized that if I wasn't in the middle of all of this, I might not get it either.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. What do you never created a zine, a mini zine. What do you do? Well, you can go up to YouTube and there's all kinds of promos on it. If you've never played guitar, you're not a guitarist.
Yeah.
You might not get various nuances and elements of what it means to play guitar. I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. John, we have more questions. Jonas says, I can fully relate to the situation where the wife feels like you're married to the band. And in fact, we have had the same talks, my wife and I. It's almost like beginning a third party into the family, bringing in a third party. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. My wife really wants to support, and she's so happy seeing my joy working with all of this and with the band and our father. But sometimes I feel like I cannot return that favor and level of support to her. How did you feel dealing with this?
Yeah, when you're home, be at home.
Good.
Don't constantly have the headphones on, constantly blasting, the room with incredible 135 decibels, of music. Just focus on your wife. And if you have kids, really do focus. I mean, it's the discipline of your thoughts. And this is who I'm with right now. It's living in the moment. Some people say being mindful. That's not just some Buddhist phrase. It's being thoughtful. It's using your head, being mindful, and living in the moment with the person you're with. And the most important person you're going to be with outside of Jesus is your spouse, is your
Yeah.
married
Yes.
partner, and your kids when you have one or more kids. And of course, when you're on the road, well, one thing we did, we would take our wives with us. They'd take turns. We couldn't always afford it, but we would take turns. And of course, Wendy was in the band, so I was pretty spoiled. But I got to tell you, we spent less time together and I don't just mean sexually, but in general, on tour. Plus, we would take our kids. They would take turns. Our kids have been all over the world. We would take one at a time out of all of our children, and sometimes two. And we were able to bring a nanny along to help pitch in. Wendy was focused, doing interviews and all the rest of it. But the point is, focus on her. Also, I would suggest maybe she doesn't like the music you do. Maybe it's not her cup of tea. 31 dB earplugs, bring her to the shows, encourage her to come, invite her, take her out. Don't just, and pay attention to her, not just the other guys and ladies, whatever, in the band, not just the fans, not just the people you're ministering to. Be together as much as you can, even on the road, if it's at all possible. Here's another thing. Space out the shows. Now, again, easy for me to say. From day one, Jesus people supported us as an outreach ministry and missionaries. And that's what we were. That's what I am today. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for me to say this. We booked tours that made sense to where we would be home throughout a given year pretty much equally, if not more, than being on tour. And, this is where the full-time musician versus a part-time musician, what's at stake? What's at stake is your marriage. What's at stake is your family. What's at stake? I mean, the grace of God is that all the res members and even past members still married to the same people. The commitment was there, so we would schedule tours, even when we did fly tours all over the U.S., Canada, Puerto Rico. We were all over the place. We would do like 2 or 3 or 4 shows at the most, 4 at the most, and then we'd fly back home. And we set the tours up and scheduled them in such a way that we could go back and forth. So we might be on tour. It looked like, they're on tour for a month. But if you looked at the dates, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and often Thursday, and mostly Thursday, we were home. And we would fly home on Sunday. And sometimes we would skip doing a Sunday night show so that we could be home, And so it was just spacing out the tours and then not touring every single month. And the fact of the matter is, I'm going to say what I've said all along. And I'm regardless, if I had to work at a McDonald's so I could go out and do shows on weekends, fine, I'd do it. I'd said it for years, and I mean it today. I mean it now. And so the deal is like, are you going to burn your family on the altar of your music career? How many Christians and pre-believers, unbelievers, non-believers have done that very thing? No way. It ain't worth it. I'm not going to do it. And from everything I can see in Scripture, my relationship to Jesus and then to my wife is paramount. Not music, not my ability to rearrange sound waves.
Yes, absolutely. John, we have one more question. Great answer, by the way. Kathy says, Glenn, is there any truth to the rumor?
Sorry.
Reunion and
No. People don't understand. Well, maybe they do, but we eventually had a full-time staff.
Yeah.
Year round to do a week.
Yeah.
Of all of that stuff that you saw at the festival. Sorry. And same with Res Band. John and Tina are more involved with their kids and mainly their grandkids than ever. Stu as well. And they're both of them have moved from Jesus people some years ago, and they're very, very connected and committed to their families, and that's really the issue for them. My wife doesn't. Once in a blue moon, when she's up to it with her lungs, she has pulmonary fibrosis in both lungs. You want to pray for Wendy. I don't even tell people if she's with me on the road when she can come. Sometimes I'll say, well, if this is not more of a blues crowd, if some old res heads, I'll ask her are you up for it? And if she's up for it, Then I'll surprise everybody, bring her out, and we'll do one or two res songs on sort of unplugged, or I'll play an electric and just the two of us will do an old res song or two where she's singing. But it's all about how she's feeling, at the time. She's doing great today. She slept like a baby last night and bouncing around. You'd never know, right? So it's about relationships.
Yes.
And it's about what's most important. And these are the most important people in our lives.
Yeah. And, Glenn, getting back to this question, it's one thing to pioneer, and it's another thing to feel like you own the empire that you're creating. I get excited when more and more people start the kind of ministry that we've had at Sanctuary. And I know that you get excited. You had the first festival, so look at how many people have used your hard work as a foundation for building the same kinds of things. And that's what it's all about. Again, it's about family, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, look, being faithful and obedient in love, not to earn forgiveness, earn salvation. It's not about earning. Salvation is a free gift in Jesus Christ.
Yes.
It's relationship. But when you're trying to pay attention and the Lord guides you and the fruit happens, and by the way, not everybody sees the kind of fruit that maybe some other band or some other pastor or ministry center does. Not everybody recognizes, and you're not always going to see with your natural eyes in this life the fruit of your labor. I know a lot of folks that nobody's ever heard of and nobody will on this earth, who are just the most loving disciples of Jesus, who have poured their lives out and been examples to so many thousands of people, planted churches, won people to the Lord, on and on it goes, and nurtured and brought healing and deliverance, real freedom to people who were like myself back in the day, full-on addicts. So, it's not about popularity or publicity or impressing anybody. None of that means anything. But when you see people who can say, kind of like Eric Little said on the mission field, right? When I run, I feel God's pleasure. He made me fast,
I like that.
So, okay, I have a dear friend, Bob Hay, back in the day, Fellowship of Contemporary Christian Ministries. Bob used to talk about the rod of God is like the axe of God, as in the guitar, and pick it up and make use of it, but understand it's God's. And as far as empire, there's only one eternal kingdom, and it ain't mine.
Yes.
Our kingdom's got to go. They got to go. Our little petty. This is the edifice, the house we built for our glory. Do all you do for the glory of God. I read that somewhere. Do all you do in love. And of course, how many times have I blown that? I mean, how many? I'll probably blow it today, a few times. I mean, it gets back to being soaking in the Word of God from Genesis to Revelation. It gets back to attitude and character. It's not about what you produce. I've got 3 albums in the can, eventually coming out. Maybe one very soon, I hope. But there's so many reasons why it has to be worked on a bit more, and blah blah blah. I think a lot of people here will very much relate to that one. And at the end of the day, that's not what my life is about. This is an artistic expression and a ministry and a witness to help people. It's not about impress the world, on how cool you are. I could care less about cool. I could care. By the way, I happen to have my old burned out shirt here that Phil Kagi was selling these for a while. It's
Oh, that's
it's one woman, many guitars. And I just happen to be wearing it today. I didn't wear it up for the show or anything, but so relationship 101, 102, 103, and 109. It's
yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, Glenn, it's you and I are not kids anymore. But I think once we get a little older, there's something that kicks in all of us, and that is our need to mentor and the joy that comes with it.
Sure, sure.
So, so I imagine, because I experience this, and I'm sure you do too, I have joy in watching people who I know I've had a part in their lives create and do. You know, Jonas said, "Thank you. I'm the next generation." He's doing great music. He's going to do great things with this worship project they're doing in Kenya, and uh, and just the fact that you nurtured him at a time when it was really important, he will now carry on. You know, we've got to get over this feeling that God needs us for eternity, and get used to the idea that there is a succession, there is a mentoring, older men mentoring the younger men, older women the younger women, and our joy, my biggest joy these days, are in the people that I mentor and what they're accomplishing. Don't you find that true?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, Paul to Timothy,
Yes, yes.
don't let anybody despise your youth, but be an example to them. And he lists some specifics. You should look that one up. When Paul's writing his young friend, his disciple that he'd been discipling in Christ, he
Yes.
says, I want you to go and find other people
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like you, like that, and raise them up. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, to me, whether it's, I mean, people, yes, I hear it all the time, and I'm encouraged by it very much so. But I also realize I didn't make it rain. I mean, when the rain came down and people got touched, got blessed, came to Jesus, came back to the Lord. I'm talking to more and more folks that have backslidden for years, who've come back to the Lord,
Yes.
and they pulled out their old res records that they happen to have, or some
Yeah.
guy said he's got a cassette tape in his van. He says, I got to break down and get the CD because the tape is about shredded now.
Yes.
But coming back to the Lord now, and the power of lyrics, the power of music, the power of stuff you've written, the power of interviews that you've given, the power of simple, all the time. Oh, you walked up to me, or I walked up to you at Cornerstone Festival, and we sat down and talked for 2 hours, and my life has changed. I mean, so,
Yes.
I often remember those, but I don't always, and it's just been so many people over so many years, right through the world, so many tours everywhere. What more can I give but Jesus? What more can I do but help encourage somebody to walk close and closer and closer and closer with the Lord, and to recognize the grace of God, unmerited, unearned,
Yes.
unearned favor.
Yes.
That's His grace.
Yes.
He made it rain. He was the one by His Spirit that moved and touched somebody's life and heart. I mean, our first gig, and we were horrible. I'm talking terrible with a capital T. It happened to be around the 12th of December of 71. And we played north of Milwaukee in a little armory. And I can't remember, there might have been, I don't know, 30, 35 people. Half of them made commitments to Jesus that night.
Wow.
And seemed extremely sincere. Okay. I don't mean just they showed up and prayed a prayer and went home. And you're just kind of going, wow. And I mean, we were, cast your bread on the waters.
Yeah.
How many loaves and you got any food? These people are hungry. Give it to me. Let go of it. Give it to me. He took it. Remember what he did? He broke it. That's a whole message. Blessed Father. Then he gave it back to them, and then they distributed it. And that's when the miracle. I think the miracle is that they surrendered their loaves and fish. If we could see more musicians surrender. Pardon me, I'm banging into the laptop. If we could get a few more musicians to surrender themselves and their music and even their dreams. One time, a guy who shall remain nameless just comes to mind. He talked to a couple of young Res fans, and they visited him before they came to see us in Chicago. This is years ago. He said, you got to be careful how you do your music career, because you may end up like doing some soup kitchen like Res Band is up there in Chicago. And they couldn't believe they heard it. And these guys loved this guy. When they were talking to me, telling me about it, and I'm like, well, first of all, are you sure you heard him say that? And is that exactly how, are those his words, or are those words as you remember them? You really be careful. And they said, no, he really said that. And we just thought, my goodness, you missed the boat. I said, well, he's human. He's human. He's got clay feet like I do. I've blown it. I've mouthed off and said things I should have never said at times. And I try not to ever name names. Look, I know him. I love him. It's a non-issue. Forgive him. Go on. Let it go. Let it water off the duck's back. What God has called us to do is what we better be doing. And if the whole world thinks we're idiots, they're not on the judgment seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not on the throne. They don't separate truth from untruth perfectly any more than I do or any of us do. We've all, I know in part, we know in part, we're all flawed. Forgive them. Forgive them. Walk on. God bless them. When that person came up in my head, always I would pray, Lord, bless them. Give them the same grace I want for my wife and I. Give them the same grace that I want. Don't let me harbor unforgiveness or to be ungrateful or just if somebody is mean or harsh, if somebody misjudges you, well, welcome to the broken, sinful, fallen world. I mean, that's the world we live in.
Right.
And the church is as rife with it at times, pettiness, little Mickey Mouse judgments. You know, sometimes I feel like saying, when's the last time you were out in the street having a conversation about Jesus with anybody? Yes. With anybody. And you're going to make judgments on all the evangelists, right?
Yes.
You know, that'd be like me saying, what an idiot mechanic. And I'm no mechanic. I don't, you know, I mean, I know how to drive the car when it's still drivable to see a mechanic. I know how to, you know, add a little oil and check the fluids a bit. And I can change a tire. But I'm not a mechanic. So you've got people in the church as well as outside of it making judgments all the time. I was like, yes. So some people think, you know, you're the next Apostle Paul. They say you Blade Runner. You got the wrong guy. That's not me. Whatever. Somebody might think, you know, they think more of us sometimes than they should because we happen to be able to sing or play or write music or do shows, or they came to the Lord, so everybody else ought to come to the Lord through you. Right? That's not going to happen. So, you know, take a chill pill, calm down, and
you know, I think a lot of it is really being intentional in falling in love with the people who God loves, and
that's everybody.
Yes, but it's those people in the soup kitchen as much as it's that crowd in the church, because they're people who desperately need to know Jesus. And when you fall in love with the people that God loves, you're just happy to be there and sharing the good news with them. Yeah.
That's somebody's son.
Yes.
That's somebody's brother, sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, who's dirt poor. You know, look, I'm going down to the jail last night and driving back, and I see it every time. Tents. Chicago has a number of tent cities, and you know, within them, in the parks and different places. Oh, how shameful! I'm like, you don't know these people. When's the last time you had a conversation with 3 or 4 people who are homeless?
Yes.
And what do you know? Really know? There's a lot of ignorance in the church. It's always been. And there's a lot. I'm ignorant in a number of areas. Hello, you know. So there's plenty of ignorance in the big wide world, and somebody wants a scapegoat. Somebody wants to blame somebody for their mess. For what, you know, I carry this fear, this worry, this anger inside, this rage. Okay, so it's a cheap shot to blame widows and orphans in their affliction.
Yes.
And are you keeping yourself unspotted from the world? Is that you living out what James says true holiness is? You doing that? Huh? I was in a situation, you know, I hunt, I shoot. I don't hunt much now because my priorities are, you've heard them. And if you went online and looked, I'm doing a million things. But I get to a point where I start talking to people and they care more about their rights than people that are being killed. They care more about their ability. And I'm a gun owner. Mm-hmm. It's a controversial subject, but I'll breach that and any other subject anytime. And the bottom line is, do you care more about people or do you care more about your ability to do something you want to do?
Yes.
And unfortunately, the funnel down becomes that for too many people. I'm like, love your neighbor. Well, right away, the dude said to Jesus, well, who's my neighbor?
Yeah.
It's like, there must be some kind of way out of here, said the joker to the thief. I mean,
Yes.
the law of the land must not supersede the law of God and our living out the scriptures to love our neighbor. And even as Jesus says, to love our enemies.
Yes.
How are we doing, church? Don't talk to me about loving God. Don't talk to me about being a Christian. You show up every time the doors open. So does the devil. He's still the devil. Demons show up at all of our services. They do. Everybody, everywhere on earth. The question is Jesus Christ calling the shots, or you have it my way or the highway?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, these folks that are living in tents, many of them, lots of them, are serious mental illness. And some of them are doing dope to take the edge off because they don't know what else to do. They can buy cheap street drugs to get help. There are city services in Chicago, a lot of them, but boy, you have to jump through the hoops. And I speak from experience. So you look around and you say, how did these people get in their situation? And I think sometimes we're the drive-by. I'm not talking about gangbangers with 9mm. The Christians become the drive-by. We just roll up the window and we drive by, and then we judge the Bob Beemans of the world. And what are you doing out there serving these bums? I'm like, that's somebody's daughter, somebody's son.
Yes.
Some of these folks have been abused royally. Some of them have mental illness issues. I mean, I see 30, 35% in jails and prisons all over this country, by the way.
Yeah.
About 30 to 35% are veterans, by the way, post-traumatic stress and other things.
Yes.
And it's the exact same thing with homeless folks.
Yes. Yes.
Same thing. And in our shelter, on a low end on any given night, and I asked from time to time, we still see something like 25% on the low end of people who are veterans who had been homeless, living in tents, living in under a bridge, coming into shelter for food, maybe eventually plugging in and willing to give it a go with the programs and the help that we're able to offer. And there's eventually end up with keys in their apartment, in their own apartment, and a day job and so on. But so much of this is mental illness, so much physiological, chemical, not just drug abuse and addiction cause, right? And I see the same thing in jails and prisons all over the country. So there's a lot of mess going on. And I'm afraid that there's too much ignorance among folks in the body of Christ, in the churches, as to how these things, oh my, it's back with the Pharisees. Well, who sinned, this man or his parents?
Yeah.
That's why he's sick. That's why he's either blind, whatever. Right. You're just going, God have mercy, because we're not very good at it, and we need to learn how to have mercy. And that's part of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about music ministry and relationship.
And I think sometimes when you're talking about driving by, rolling the window down, sometimes we feel like if I just throw some money at it, that everything's okay and I'm going to be fine. And I've had times when people have offered us a good chunk of money, but I realized that God was asking them to love these people and not just to throw money at it. And I couldn't accept the money. And I think, I've always felt like, and Glenn, I'm sure you would agree, that my congregation is not my source. It's not the source of this ministry. It's not up to these people to give, or else we're not going to make it. God will provide in any way he decides to, but it is my responsibility to capture their hearts with the scriptures, and for God to begin to lead them in a way that actually makes a difference in people. That's
absolutely.
That's the bottom line.
I'll confess something to you here. I don't think I ever mentioned this to you. Years ago, at a GMA week in good gospel music, I sometimes refer to as the Good Money Association week. I'm sorry, the old leftist activist in me never went away. I mean, I get down there, and one of the things, it was a good thing, okay? It was a good thing. And I might have blown it. I may have messed up in this. But a group of Christian musicians were talking about visiting a local shelter and maybe, helping pass out food or just meet folks or just go down to share, maybe even bring a guitar and do a song or two, whatever. So a bunch of them got together and they had a van full, maybe a couple vans full. And Wendy asked me, she said, "Are you going to go, honey? You know about this?" I say, "Yeah, I heard." It feels to me like publicity.
Yeah.
And I don't know the hearts or the attitudes of the musicians or the folks, and that's fine. But I don't want pictures taken of me doing this in Nashville. We are involved in a homeless shelter 24/7, 365 in Chicago.
Yes.
This is not about photo ops. And I think my time would be better spent having one-on-one convos with folks right here at the hotel in this area.
Photo op.
So I didn't go. I didn't go. But that's the only reason I did. And I think some people might have scratched their heads and wondered. And she said, "Are you sure?" I said, I thought it through and prayed about it. That's where I'm at. I might have blown it. Maybe I should have gone anyway. I mean, maybe it was, reverse humility or something. I don't know, sort of proud that I'm not doing this thing. But at the end of the day, we have got to get beyond pretending. We've got to get beyond these quick little, it's okay. Do the summer mission trip for 2 weeks. That's a whole different story than from moving into a neighborhood and building bridges and relationships and put your neck on the block. What I love, I've told you this before, going out in front when it's warmer, and I hadn't got to do it much this year. I've been so caught up with family and various ministry. But at night, I end up being pretty burned out. But I would come down and with a folding chair. And I did it this year, but not as much as I would have had. Warmer weather, yeah. A couple of battery-powered amps. Sometimes I sing a bit. Sometimes I don't. Pull out a guitar, cigar box guitar, harp, And it's so fun because, I'll end up just blowing blues licks. And, people stop. And sometimes I'll open my eyes up because I'll often close when I play and, bring out the slide. And all of a sudden I got 2 or 3 people about 3 feet or less from my face going, whoa. One guy, I couldn't believe it. Well, I won't tell you the story because it will sound like a brag. He ended up putting his hat on me. And I looked up and this guy, he was obviously out of it. I don't even know if he remembered what he did or whether he heard some guy in the streets doing blues the next morning. He may not have. But he's just like, "Who are you, man?" And I said, "I'm Glenn Kaiser, and I live here at Jesus People, and I love Jesus, and I love you, and I love blues, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing."
Yeah.
He's changed my life. I mean, just boom, 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 just like that. He went, "How often do you do this?" And I said, "Well, sometimes once or twice a week in warm weather. So much depends on schedules, and I'm involved. I'm, chaplain at Cook County Jail, volunteer chap, and I do a bunch of stuff." So and his friend puts his face up by my ear and goes, "You got $1?" And I said, "No, I don't have any money at all. I'm sorry." But, Cornerstone Community Outreach, 3 blocks that way, food, all sorts of stuff, right? It's just seeds and watering.
That's the whole thing, though, isn't it? Glenn, we could probably talk for 10 hours. I think we could. And but next time, and I love that you keep coming back. I love our discussions, and I think people are getting a lot out of them. Listening to 2 old guys talk.
If they don't reject you entirely for having knuckleheads like me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. I love you to bits. I love what you do.
Yeah. Thank you. And I love what you do. We have a mutual admiration society. Yeah. But Glenn, next time we talk, I'd like to talk a little bit about the older musicians that are no longer involved. And I want to ask them the question, when did God tell you to stop? And I want to talk about how do you keep going after the fame and everything has subsided and after your last album and, all of that. It's a discussion that we need to have.
Would love to have it. I'll give one practical answer.
Yeah.
Do it wherever you can.
Yes, yes.
Do it in somebody's. I've had backyard shows. I mean, backyard shows that were incredible.
Yes.
It wasn't about, there might have been 25, 30 people,
Yeah.
but I mean, what went on in people's hearts and the relationships that were built and things that happened in those moments were massive.
But Glenn, the real test of the heart isn't what you can do with 2,000 people. It's what you can do with 20, and I think that's, well, we're going to talk about that next
Okay.
time.
All
And
right. We'll give it a go.
the last question was, do you ever think about publishing the 30th anniversary copy of the book again?
At this point, we have a very small staff at Gurr Records. And at this point, Gurr oversees all of that sort of stuff. And it just wouldn't be possible. I mean, we're doing so many things
Yeah.
for different bands and artists. And like I say, I've got 3 albums just waiting. I think I have to redo one track on this one that's going to be released, I think, first. But there are about 3 other tracks that somebody else has to take care of. Where they have to do their tracking. And then it's the editing. And then it's the production after pre-production,
Get it. Yeah. I get it.
So it's all about time, and we'll see. But
they can get
yeah,
it now.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Right now, you can go online and look at it, read it. You can download it. If somebody wants to reprint, we can talk about it. But it's so much work for a small group of people, and God bless them. Gurr Records, my friends and co-laborers, my colleagues, using the professional term, are incredible. They are incredible, and what they do is amazing. And their inspiration and encouragement, and putting up with me and my idiosyncrasies, which are from as far as the east is from the west. It's pretty incredible.
My staff too, I'll tell you.
I understand. I get it. Believe me. Well, so you surround yourself with great folks, but there's a limit to time and energy and ability to do all these things. So maybe sometime.
We'll keep talking about it.
Okay.
But folks, the key is watch it online. Look at it online. You can download it. You can read it there, and you can get to say, it's a digital age. It's okay to just read it on.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm going to put these zines up.
Yeah, good.
I'm going to take photos of them and just put them up online too. Why not?
I think that'd be awesome. My friend, it's good to see you as always.
Back at you.
Great to talk with you. And we'll look forward to our next conversation, and we'll have hopefully some great things to share, and especially our older musician friends getting back in the game. That'll be good. Folks, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate, as always, you being part of this. And Glenn, again, thank you. Folks, we'll see you again next week. Don't forget, you are blessed. So go and be a blessing.